Morning. Richard Hayes, the Vice Chair of the Board. Welcome everyone here and convene the meeting. Observe that we have a quorum as all members are present, so I'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda here are introductions. So we have a new board member, Jean. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Happy to do so. I'm Gina McGrath, and I am obviously the new board member. I work for the city of Louisville. I've worked for Louisville for 22 years. Currently, I am the assistant city manager and worked in a variety of roles there, mostly in the finance and budget area. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I could take a moment to make an introduction as well.
Absolutely.
I'd like to introduce Mr. David Magana, who's seated over there at the front of the room. David is our new Director of Marketing and Communications at DCTA. He joined us just a couple of weeks ago, has experience in marketing and communications at DFW Airport, as well as most recently in the private sector before joining us. We're extremely happy to have him. So thank you for being here today, David.
Welcome. Any other introductions? The next item on the agenda then is the public comment. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the board of directors on any agenda item or other matters relating to the North Texas Mobility Corporation. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes to address any items. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. Citizens that are not able to connect to the Zoom meeting must email his or her public comment to spell@ntmc.com no later than 12 p.m. on Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 to ensure the comment will be read. Board of directors are not permitted to take action on any subject matter by a speaker during citizen comments. However, the board of directors may have the item placed on a future agenda for action. Refer the item to the NTMC officers for further study or action. Briefly state existing NTMC policy or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. Are there any citizens that would like to make a comment? Did anyone send in a public comment?
No, sir, they did not.
Being no comments, then we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda, just to consider an approval of the minutes.
The minutes will be ready at the next board.
Okay. Next item are informal reports. Let's look at our monthly financial statements for fiscal year 2022 year to date, October 2023. Anybody gonna comment on
It's
that?
just an informational report. Just an informational report, no briefing item required.
So what this report shows is $7,337,796 in income or transfers from DCTA and the same number of expenses.
Correct. I think the major takeaway here is nothing about the operations of NTMC has resulted in a change in net position for this organization.
Any questions or comments on the financial statements? Next then is the regular agenda. We'll begin with the presentation of the general manager's monthly report. Call on Mr. Maurice Pearl.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We'll start with the organizational chart. We'll start with the organizational chart. We do have a couple of additional positions that have been vacated in dispatch, and we are going to recruit for those positions. The road supervisor position that is vacant has been filled, and we continue to work on the operators and recruitment of operators.
Thank you. All right, how about our ridership report?
Ridership report, I'll defer to Troy whenever he speaks regarding ridership.
Maurice, I see we have a new CDL operator with us as of November 28th, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, congratulations on that. And
You were
we,
able to get one.
what's that?
You were able to get one.
Yeah, and so we certainly welcome our new operator on board. So thank you for that.
The ticket sales, the fare box, as you can see, the totals here are 48.87 on page 8 in the packet here, and the point of sale is 84.03. The drivers, anybody have any questions regarding that? If not, we'll move on to the driver's pay and benefits comparison. And Cameron Springer will speak to that.
Good morning. How are y'all?
Good morning.
So last month we did a presentation on the driver wage analysis. We were asked to put it in more of a readable form for the format. So we chose to do a line graph. It's easier to read. The first page is the 2023 analysis chart. It's just with the NTMC, Trinity Metro, DART, Denton ISD, NV Transit, and Beaumont. It'll give you, it's separated out by months and years. And you still see that NV Transit is higher at the end of the scale due to retention. And then we could go to the next page of page 10. The 2023 wage analysis with benefit premiums, we added the benefit premiums to the wage scale. We broke it down by hour and added it in with their hourly total pay. We took an average of their benefits and what it costs broken down by hour, and then added it to their compensation, their hourly compensation. And this kind of gives you a scale of what NTMC starts out with for non-CDLs with their benefit premiums included that the employer pays for, and Trinity Metro and DART, Denton ISD, NV Transit, and Beaumont as well. And then we have, anybody have any questions on those?
Cameron, this is Paul. Good morning, and thank you for putting this together. I think the reason that I'd asked for this view is because what you have is obviously the hourly wage along the y-axis, and then along the x-axis is pay rate by tenure of the employee. And
Correct.
You know, the quick takeaways here, if we go back to slide 10 from my perspective, is that DART bus and rail operators lead the pack regionally. And what we were comparing was other transit operators here in the region, plus school districts that we could mine the information from. Denton ISD was the easiest to get. You're still in process on Louisville ISD, correct?
Correct. They do contract out with, I believe, Illinois School District.
Okay.
And so it's becoming very difficult to get some of that information from them. Yes.
Okay, good point. And you and I had a conversation offline about why DART just had one line item for bus and rail operators, and Trinity Metro and us has CDL and non-CDL differentiation. So can you refresh my memory, and for the benefit of the board,
absolutely. So Trinity Metro has two different pay scales. They have Trinity Metro has a certain pay scale for non-operators. So when I say non-operators, I meant non-CDL operators. Those are the ones who come in without a CDL. That's their wage scale. For the ones who do come in with a CDL, it's a little bit different, and they get a higher pay rate. They are required to go through training, and until they are into a CDL route or have been released to drive on their own, they make a certain wage scale based on them not having a CDL when they came in. Now, going towards the next year, say, I don't know if anybody remembers like progression steps and what those look like. But as soon as that operator becomes a CDL driver, that next year they move to the CDL scale for that following year. And same with DART. DART got rid of their smart bus operators. So their smart operators were non-CDL operators. They received, when they redid their negotiations for their contract, they brought all operators in and rail operators in at the same wage. So their rail operators and their bus operators, they all make the same wage. DART has their own CDL training program that they put their non-CDL operators through, but they make the same.
Got it. Thank you.
NV Transit also has CDL and non-CDL. However, they make their pay ranges are just like they're the same. They don't differentiate between CDL and non-CDL.
Thank you for that.
Anything further on that particular item?
Any questions?
Ms. Burrow, if you'd like to continue on your report.
On the driver's availability pool, we do have that set up as well. And we'll have that emailed out to the board members and to get that correct and probably that's not happening today. But we'll get that out to you and to the board members. As soon as we get that.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item, the driver and staff vacancy recruitment status. And Kenny, if you would please add something.
I'm sorry, Maurice, I cannot hear you.
I need to push my green button. The driver and staff vacancy recruitment status.
So during the month of November, NTMC has reached out to multiple candidates for multiple positions. Just one of our highest priorities right now are of course the CDL bus operators. NTMC has sourced and reached out to 57. 24 of those sources responded and said either they were not interested in the position, either they did not feel like the pay was enough, or they did not feel like the position was a good enough fit. We did extend an offer to one CDL operator. And of course, he came on November 28th. Our mechanics, we have sourced way over 60 mechanics for the 3 positions that we currently have available. And we are looking at pay as a factor of not coming on board. We extended an offer to a mobility service representative. Her ETA to start date was 11/28 as well. Unfortunately, she will not be joining us. We are still looking for a parts coordinator. We did fill the road supervisor this month in December. And we are sourcing and looking for service attendant and still a payroll and benefits coordinator and an office coordinator.
Any questions?
I have a comment. So Cameron, I appreciate this view. What you're illustrating for us here is the pipeline of how we're going about trying to fill these vacancies. You introduced it last month and it made sense. It makes more sense this month. So keep bringing it back, and then we'll continue to learn. You'll continue to teach us, and we'll continue to learn. it occurs to me that in order to simplify this, you may be able to strike some of these columns just to, and still be able to tell the story of the pipeline. So do you mind if I walk through
No,
my
no,
thoughts?
absolutely. That's absolutely fine. I did want to put that chart down there, the data chart down there too, for y'all to see, you know, what we're actually doing, what we're trying to do, and what we have been able to accomplish with the amount of work that we've put into recruitment.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that like on the operator side, some of candidates sourced, that's you all actually calling people and saying, hey, you should be thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
So I think let's just stick with the operator column, and obviously this would apply for all of them. But if we talk about, we want to say these are the number of jobs we have open that we're trying to fill. Absolutely. I think the source candidates invited to apply is important. If they're not interested, I think we see that because nothing progresses beyond. So I think you could strike that row and still be able to tell the story.
Perfect.
It's important to know you've sourced the candidate and then they're interested. So I would keep that line. And if they go from interest to application, that's the next step in the process.
Correct.
And then when they get interviewed or scheduled for interview, that's the next step in the process. If they no-show, we'll see that because the number won't show up down the line. So you could strike that no-show line. And then if they're qualified, we'll see it. If they're not qualified, we'll see it because they don't show up. So you could strike that as well. So there's three rows that you could, I love the data, the numbers below the bars. And that's 3 rows that you could take out. That'll make the bar chart easier to read and make your data keeping easier too. So that's my thought. If anybody else has any other ideas, I'm open to it.
I can do that. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, Mr. Pearl, conclude your report there.
Yes, sir. We will move on to the NTMC Wellness Program, and Steve Beck will speak to that.
Good morning, Stephen Beck, the Safety, Security, and Training Manager for NTMC, also the Chair of the Wellness Committee. Currently, we are getting ready to do the biometric screening in January to start off with a healthy new year for our employees. We just recently completed our healthy cook-off right before Thanksgiving, where people are invited to bring a healthy food option in with a recipe. Some of the items we had was, excuse me, fried rice, but it was made out of cauliflower. We had mashed radishes as a substitution for mashed potatoes. And then we had a few other unique food items that were brought in for the employees. We are looking here in the next week or so to do the main course option for people to bring in for that. And then what we'll do is we'll take all those recipes that people brought in and distribute those to the employees as a cookbook for them to have an option for a healthier Christmas meal for their families. We're also encouraging people to get out and exercise, walk, and we're looking at a few competition ideas, but the committee is meeting regularly and we are progressing and making our employees healthier. And we are starting to see some momentum behind them getting excited about some of the items that we're doing.
How were the mashed radishes received?
I believe they were received. I personally did not try them, but the bowl was empty when I left.
I do have to say they were pretty good.
All right, thank you. All right, the next item then is discussion and consider approval of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1338, the Joint Labor and Management Safety Committee Charter. Mr. Pearl.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hayes. This is included in your packet. And in March of 22, the bipartisan infrastructure law was revised and the language is modified within that document. And working closely with the local 1338 union leadership, we have discussed and have a joint labor and management safety committee charter. And within that charter, it allows for more of a bottom-up approach. And this is within the bipartisan infrastructure law. It allows for a bottom-up approach to safety within the organization, where frontline employees and NTMC staff address safety concerns in their safety committee meetings. And once those are approved, that'll be moved up to DCTA for their review. And let's see. The charter within the goals and objectives mirror the bipartisan infrastructure law. This initially was something that they had with Austin. And that's a much larger organization. So we did revise that and pare it down some to fit the need of NTMC and the setup that we have currently. So the staff and union leadership have agreed to the charter as written and are pleased with the revisions. The charter has been reviewed by NTMC legal counsel, and staff recommends approval of the Joint Labor and Management Safety Committee charter. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions by the board members?
Thank you for that, Maurice. When you say NTMC legal counsel, are you talking about Jennifer Sweeney?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Vice Chairman, I'll just give a little bit of context with regard to how this interacts with DCTA. Like Maurice said, this stand-up of such a safety committee is a requirement of the bipartisan infrastructure law. DCTA rewrote its safety plan, and that was approved by our board last month or at December 1st in response to the infrastructure law. This piece ties into the DCTA safety committee, and we appreciate extensively Mr. Pearl and Mr. Day and Mr. DeBoss at the local union who worked together to put this charter so that the union could participate. I can tell you that we went to a conference for transit agencies in Seattle back a couple of months ago, and there were lots of organizations in the room across the country that said, hey, we can't get our union to the table to even talk to us about this. What then? And the FDA didn't have an answer for that. And so I'm really proud and thankful for the fact that we've got union partners who are engaged with us. We're engaged with them. And I believe this charter is a testament to that. And so again, just want to say thank you very much to everybody involved to get this over the finish line before the deadline of December 31st of this year. Also, I would say the union expressed their appreciation when I met with them about the level of input and engagement they had through the process.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1338 Joint Labor and Management Safety Committee charter?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. Second? I'll second. All right, Mr. Bush. Thank you. Any further discussion on that item? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I think out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone wanted to make a comment. No? Okay. Thank you. All right. The motion is adopted. Next item then on the agenda is the key performance indicator briefing. Mr. Rayleigh.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Troy Rayleigh. I'm Senior Director of Facility Services. Today, we're presenting to you the KPIs. The numbers I have for you today are through Thanksgiving. At the next board meeting, we'll have the remainder of November. So, but as you can see, we did a typical this time during Thanksgiving. We usually see a drop off in ridership because the students are going home for the holidays or they're not going to class. But that's atypical to see that much drop off during, and the same thing will happen during the Christmas holidays as well. But we went from a 40,000 plus down to less than 15,000. So it's very typical. And of course, that trickles through the whole system and it affects our passengers per hour. Our missed trips didn't really taper off a lot, but our OTP did go up. So that's good. We hit the requirement, 90% for UNT. Any questions on the fixed route piece?
So I want to commend on the graph, on the missed trips, delayed starts. You see from the peak October 9th, we're on a downward trajectory. Still, we're not perfect, but we're going in the right direction. OTP trends upward from August until they reported November 20th. So that's off to the ops team at NTMC who's making that happen. What has been the means, or what's the primary levers that you're pulling or used to cause that sort of improvement over that time?
It's paying particular attention with operations and having staff out there as well to make sure that the buses leave on time, that staff is here. We're just trying to move in the right direction to make sure that everything is moving as needed. We also review the bus tracking solution as well to make sure that that's being viewed by dispatch as well as staff as well. So we all take a part in that. And if anything is noticed out of the ordinary, we all have it up on our computer. So we question as to why a bus is delayed or what's going on. And then so it's been really paid attention to lately.
Thank you.
Anything else on fixed route? This is our demand response numbers. As you can see, we have a fall off here. We didn't have the data past the week of the 13th as of last Thursday. So, but you can see that the ridership is where it needs to be, but where we keep falling off is we try to hit a 2 passengers per hour. And we're not making that mark. We need to, and that's all attributed to scheduling, delays and trips, all kinds of different things that factor into that. But we like to hit a 2 passenger per hour to make the system efficient. The next item is denied trips. As you can see, we also had an increase in denied trips in the week of 13. And then, of course, it's tapered back off. We try not to have any denied trips if possible, but they always happen in some way or another. So. And this is a combination of missed trips as well, not completed. And not completed is when they're running so late that the person is not within the window that being picked up. So. And as you can see, going to the OTP is fine in most areas. In Louisville, it continues to lag. There's an operational issue that's involved that Mr. Pearl and his crew are working on. We've identified it. We should see some improvement there. Any questions on the demand response?
Can you speak to, we had an incident come up, if not this week, it was last week, where an individual reached out to leadership in one of our member cities about the paratransit ride showing up early and he wasn't notified, and then he missed the trip as a result. How does something like that get reflected in these numbers?
Well, that person was counted, in that instance was counted as a no-show. So that would be not on this. We don't report no-shows.
You don't report no-shows. So, okay. So there's another category. I guess my message here is there's another category of places where we miss customers when that sort of thing happens. And that's, in my mind, goes back to a customer service issue. There's a root cause thing that needs to be identified there to figure that out. And this individual, like I said, went straight to the top at his member city. So even if he didn't do that, there's others who don't do that, and we see the results of that. And so that's just something else for us to be aware of. He would have been accounted as a no-show for that ride. So in this case, these are things where the bus just doesn't show up.
Right.
His case is one where the bus showed up, but they didn't connect.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And in that instance, the individual we're talking about was scheduled 40 minutes prior to his requested time. We're allowed a certain amount of time. The question as to how that could have been handled better. So Maurice and myself have talked about this, and they're working on that. So it's a combination of communication and scheduling.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else on command response? Mike? I have a quick question. Why? Why is there such a difference? Do you have any idea why some are doing really pretty well about going up and going where they should and others aren't? Is it numbers? Is it locations? Is it routes? Is it, what is it that you feel is causing the difference in the responses of the different communities? Okay, well, there's a lot of variables there, and it has to do with traffic mitigation issue, has to do with passenger loading issues, and it also has to do with the operator. So when you get those three elements together, you get a varied result, obviously, but especially in Denton. Sorry, Mr. Denton. But they have a lot of projects going on, especially in Denton, that one day to the next we're doing. So.
No, and that's probably the reason I'm asking, because we seem to have been pretty lucky, but I know we don't, we meaning Highland Village, we don't really use the facility the way, in my opinion, with the amount we should. And so I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that we were not doing, that we need to do, that would help improve what it is that you're able to give us in Highland Village.
Yeah, because the two different pieces help you understand. The demand response is, door-to-door service. And so those trips are varied depending on the person's need on that particular trip. So hard to gauge what impact is that. It's usually traffic or loading time or the operator. As far as fixed route goes, they go down a designated path at a designated time every day, X number of trips. And for those, when you have detours, that's what impacts it. But in our processes, we go through schedule reviews. We have an AVL that we monitor, and it tells us, it accumulates the data as how many trips we've taken, what the average trip is. So we usually make schedule tweaks on our time stops to add time in or take time out. Because sometimes you end up with too much time between two stops and not enough time for the next stop. So you have to make those adjustments. We do that every bit. So we do it 3 times a year, basically 3 to 4 times.
And let me ask you another question. Have what we feel is a pretty good police department. Okay. Is there any way that they can help you with what it is you're trying to do? Is there anything they can do as far as opening the door, shall we say, for a particular time when it's best that, some roads are probably not used by, our biggest problem is everybody wants to drive their kid to school. That's my point. Is there anything we can do to eliminate the amount of cars that are on the road driving kids to school because nobody wants to use a school bus for some reason? Is there anything we can do to make it better as a result of having more of them use transportation that is available to them so that we don't have so many cars on them? I know that's a terrible question to ask you, but I'm trying to figure out some way to make it better for our city.
Yeah.
And right now, it's not the fault of DCTA, but I think there's got to be some way that DCTA and the city can work together to do something positive.
I'll rescue Troy on that one. I think it's a good, it's a little bit outside the scope of this conversation, but it's a good conversation to have when we start talking about long range service planning as DCTA. And those conversations would be, what are the types of services that would meet the needs that exist in the community? And so I've had the same thought in different places. And so you park that in your bank of good ideas that we can get to in the near future.
The most efficient system is the school buses. To get as many people as possible at that same location.
Yeah, I really wish they do that, but unfortunately, for whatever reason in Highland Village, they had this terrible thought about having their kid be put on a school bus, and some of them may have 5 kids, maybe some have 3, some have 6, and it just drives me nuts. That's my problem.
All right, anything else? All right, next item is has to do with just general performance issues. As you can see on our fleet, we're running tight on fleet. That number is going to change and we will continue. Basically what this line is here, these are small buses and these are large buses. We've been running more large buses on the routes simply because of availability. But we've managed to change that, so you're going to see that green line move and there'll be more separation. Vehicles available and vehicles operated for the fixed route. Okay. Complaints, no issues there. We continue to run well below our expectations. The drop off there was no data, sorry. The next item is accidents. We did have more accidents in the week of the 23rd. I didn't have the data time for the week of the 20th. But we continue to see accidents at a higher level than we want. And road calls were up, of course. So this time of year, we do get a lot of road calls because of the very temperatures. Buses too hot, buses too cold. And it has to do with getting the climate control in the right place. Any questions on APIs? James? Anything else?
Yeah. All right, the next item on the agenda then is the consider approval of the notice regarding termination of the second amended and restated agreement for transportation services between Hendrickson Transportation Group and North Texas Mobility Corporation. Mr. Christina.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. If we can go to the next slide. This is an action item. The recommendation would be for the board to approve termination of the second amendment and restated agreement for transportation services between Hendrickson Transportation Group and North Texas Mobility Corporation. The copy of that contract is in your board packet. If you would like to go through it as I'm providing this context. So next slide, please. Back in the summertime, I believe I gave a presentation about DCTA's board of directors and their interest in what are the options and opportunities for NTMC moving forward. And this is a borrowed copy of one of the slides in that presentation, just talking about what NTMC is overall. And because of our 2 newest board members, and then also for the rest of us, it's always good to be reminded. I thought I'd go through this really briefly. The North Texas Mobility Corporation is in place to carry out the business of providing our bus service in our member cities. And to lead the North Texas Mobility Corporation, NTMC contracted with HTG to provide those management services, which consists of the general manager, the assistant general manager, the safety director, and the board secretary. Right now, the NTMC board of directors, as you see in that table on the right, you'll recognize those names and where they come from. And then the primary responsibilities of this board is really to prepare the budget, to hire a general manager to supervise the operation and employees of NTMC, and to engage with DCTA in the provision of those services. Right now, the officers of NTMC are listed there as employees of Hendrickson Transportation Group. Mr. Hendrickson, who is here with us today, Scott Lewis, our treasurer, and then Mr. Spell, who's also here with us today. Next slide, please. So I wanted to provide an overall statement on the what and the why of this change that is being proposed. The what is really 3 items that would evolve NTMC operations and NTMC's orientation with DCTA. And these are covered in this agenda item and the 2 that follow. So this agenda item regards terminating the contract with Hendrickson Transportation Group effective March 31st of 23, because the agreement expires in March 31st of 23. And it requires a 90-day notice if we're going to terminate. 90 days from March 31st is December 31st. And this is the final meeting before that December 31st date. Another opportunity, although not a requirement necessarily, is the modification of the NTMC bylaws, which we'll talk about afterwards. And then the last piece, if the board does choose to terminate the contract with Hendrickson Transportation Group, then that gives the NTMC the opportunity and the need to hire a general manager directly as an NTMC employee. There's three primary reasons why, as the DCTA CEO, I'm making this recommendation. The first is the HCG contract was a direct award that was intended as a short-term solution for some organizational needs that were imminent at the time, and those needs have been fulfilled. I think what we've seen over the course of the last couple of years is NTMC has been in a pretty steady state operation. We've seen the bus service get delivered. We've seen the bus service continue to perform under lots of different changes implemented by the DCTA board, and Hendrickson has done a commendable job in that time period. The bylaws modification, however, would allow some modifications to the structure between NTMC and DCTA that I believe would enhance communication and coordination between the two organizations. We're one team with two organizations, DCTA and NTMC. And so these bylaws modifications that Joe Gorfita has some copies that we can walk around. And if we get to a place where people want to talk about the bylaws, Mr. Vice Chair, we may need to open that item for discussion as well. But for right now, we'll just talk about contract termination. And then the last part is a direct GM hire by NTMC, I think enhances an opportunity for clarity of expectations and accountability. Right now, our general management function is provided through a contract. Managing a contract and managing an employee for performance are two different things. And I think that an NTMC employee would, again, allow for that clarity of expectations and accountability. So any questions on that? Okay, next slide. I won't spend much time on this. This is just a timeline and milestones, kind of back to more the background of where we are today. What you see there at the bottom of that table is this original agreement for transportation management services with Hendrickson was done in 20, went to March 21. Then we had another from 21 to 22. Now we're in this one that goes from 22 to 23 and expires in March, like I said before. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of the organizational structure that would be achieved with the change in, or with the termination of the NTMC contract and with the proposed modification of the bylaws. And maybe for that reason, Mr. Vice Chair, we ought to open discussion on the bylaws item as well.
All right.
Does that require us to do anything in particular to just say we want to talk about the bylaws? Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So the org chart on the left shows what our current org structure and operation looks like. The blue boxes are DCTA, the orange boxes are NTMC/HTG. We have HTG employees as board officers, and then the DCTA operation rolls up to the DCTA CEO, who has a seat on the NTMC board of directors. And the board of directors manages the contract with the general manager, who manages the NTMC organization. That's what we have today. What's proposed with the change is that NTMC officers would be employees of DCTA. The DCTA CEO is still an NTMC board member. However, the NTMC board of directors hires a general manager as a direct employee who provides leadership over the entire NTMC organization. The bylaws changes really reflect two things. The dotted line, so the solid line is supervisory responsibility, and the dashed line is like a coordination responsibility. So the general manager is responsible and reports to the NTMC board of directors. And the bylaws would call for annual goal setting for the general manager that would be done by the board, and an annual performance review process outlined by a policy that would also be executed by the NTMC board of directors. And this would largely mirror the kinds of conversations we're having on the DCTA side about the performance and accountability relationship between the DCTA board and the DCTA CEO. And then the general manager would have a coordination responsibility with the DCTA chief operating officer, who is to be named. That's an open job posting that we're working to fill right now, and would have a coordinating opportunity with the senior director of bus operations. Now that today, there is no general manager to chief operating officer relationship or coordination called for by organizational structure. But today, the general manager and our senior director of bus operations, Mr. Traley, do coordinate on a regular basis. And so that's the picture of what's happening in the bylaws that we'll talk about here in a second, but I'll pause there for any questions.
Can you clarify how you envision the general manager's duties different than the DCTA senior director of bus operations a little bit?
Sure. So the general manager is really responsible for the performance of all the employees at NTMC and getting buses out of the barn on a daily basis to provide our fixed route service and our parent transit service. On the DCTA side, we have a small bus operations team that's comprised of Mr. Raley and 3 bus employees who help with all the sort of administrative functions that are outlined in the ILA as the interlocal agreement between DCTA and NTMC that are responsibilities of DCTA to provide to NTMC. Things like procurement and finance and the financial management and all that sort of thing. So those positions on the DCTA side provide that administrative support called for by the ILA between DCTA and NTMC.
So in the proposed arrangement, do you envision the general manager having a contract or just being another NTMC employee?
We would. So so this would be likely an employment agreement sort of thing. What we're proposing is that there be we can talk about this I think there's another. There's the other item about how we go about that process. But yes, it would be an employment agreement between the NTMC board and the general manager that it hires.
So is that the only employee that would be hired? Is there any other changes to the NTMC internal kind of structure as a result of doing away with the?
So this item only contemplates the termination of the HTG contract and the direct hire of this general manager. No other changes to the NTMC organization are contemplated as a result of this move.
Okay. And I'm assuming that would not have a negative impact on any financial already budgeted. It would have probably a positive impact.
Correct. We anticipate it would, because right now we have a contract with HTG that they are compensated to provide those positions that we talked about. And in this case, NTMC is hiring a general manager that costs money. But the other positions, we feel like there's some synergies and opportunities between the DCTA organization and the NTMC organization to achieve those at an overall more efficient manner. So if you'd like, we could also, Mr. Vice Chair, we could go to item 2E, and that kind of tells the rest of the story. 2D and 2E tell the story about the rest of the bylaws modification and the hiring process. All right. Okay. So do we have the bylaws? Red lines? Okay. I might have missed my copy. Yeah. Thank you. So what you have in front of you is the current bylaws are in the packet. What you have in front of you right now is a red line copy of the bylaws, which really only affects changes in 2 locations. The first location I would point you to is paragraph 3.02. In this section, the corporation would appoint a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. The board, there's no change to that. The NTMC board would still have the ability to appoint the president, secretary, and treasurer. However, those positions are currently filled by HTG employees who would go away when the contract expires. And so then we add this red line portion that says once that new president of NTMC is appointed, then the president would be assigned duties by the board that would include, but wouldn't be limited to, supervising the day-to-day management of the general manager. That's that dotted line relationship from the org chart that we talked about. And then the second change, if you flip over to Article 6, paragraph 6.01A, this clarifies some things around the general manager role that would be hired as an employee of NTMC. The general manager is responsible for delivering mobility services authorized by the authority. That's always been. And the general manager reports directly to not the chair of the board, but the board as a whole. And that's where the board as a whole gets to define annual performance goals and conduct annual performance reviews, that sort of thing, rather than the contract management relationship we have with HCG today. And then the note, the general manager is responsible, to coordinate duties and shall be managed on an operational basis by the NTMC president. That is that dotted line relationship in the org chart between the general manager and the DCTA chief operating officer, assuming that the chief operating officer would be appointed by the board as the NTMC president. If the board chose to go a different direction, and certainly that would be my recommendation as the DCTA CEO. If the board chose to go in a different direction, then we could figure out what that org chart looks like, but it wouldn't affect how this language is written. And then the last piece just codifies this idea that this really hinges on clear and open communication between this board and the general manager. The board is responsible for the hiring, evaluation, and termination of the general manager. Questions there?
Just one question, and it kind of goes to the dotted line and the president role. Can you just help in a day-to-day or in a kind of real world scenarios? What is that difference between the president having the day-to-day supervision versus the board setting the expectations and accountability, I guess?
That's a good question. So in my mind, and this board exists to make the policy, and so you all have an input in this, but in my mind, the chief operating officer at DCTA, who would be a president of NTMC, is responsible for delivery of all DCTA services, the train, the bus operation, the on-demand service. And in that is responsible to ensure that all of those modes work together to accomplish the mission of DCTA. So the chief operating officer, as the president of NTMC, would be working with the general manager to ensure that the operation, the day-to-day getting the buses out of the barn, is set up in such a way that that overall NTMC or that overall DCTA organizational objective is achieved. And so the chief operating officer is not saying not this bus, but that one, fix this bus first, not this one, but rather is our bus operation running in such a way that we're meeting the goals and objectives of DCTA as a whole. Make sense?
It does, and I suppose in the COO's role, president's role in that function would ultimately be evaluated by the CEO separately to say, are they performing that function correctly to ensure that the general manager has the guidance they need?
Correct. What this could be is the CEO gives the DCTA CEO gives the DCTA COO a goal that says, ensure on-time performance greater than 92.5% on the bus operation. And then the general manager, the COO says, okay, GM, show me through your KPIs and all the graphs and metrics that we've been producing since August, which by the way, have resulted in an increasing performance and on-time performance. Show me that that operation is running the way it's supposed to. And that's where the communication between the general manager and the COO come into place. If the general manager is not performing, then the COO tells the CEO, hey, our general manager is not performing. The CEO sits on this board and does the performance evaluation process. It says, hey, there's some problems here. You're saying you're performing like this. I say you're performing like this. How do we resolve that? Makes sense?
All right, any other discussion on item C?
If you'd like, I can give you just really quick before we vote. I can also tell you what I think the timeline might be for how the hiring process would work. So if we want to flip a couple of slides to slide 29. So we can talk about this in a second after we vote, but the way this process, I think, could work is that this board form a committee, which is authorized in the current bylaws, to conduct the general manager hiring and employment agreement process. My recommendation for that committee would be 2 NTMC board members, of which I would be one as the DCTA CEO, and then another volunteer from this board. And then the timeline that we're on is shown, and we want to post that job in whatever immediately means for the purposes of the committee members. And then I wanted you all to be aware of the timeline that we're on between now and March 31st. So the gray boxes there are the week of 5 December, which we're in right now, all the way out to the week of 27 March, which is where the 31st of March comes into play. So December 31st is the deadline for making a 90-day notice of termination, if that's the decision of this board. Right now, we're in the process of recruiting and hiring a chief operating officer, and I expect that process could be complete and a person on board around the middle of January. It looks like a 12-week process, and the purpose of well, I'll go to the next one. There's a 12-week process where we could be posting for the general manager job, soliciting applicants. And then once the chief operating officer would come on board as the president of NTMC, it would give that person an opportunity to participate in the hiring committee because they will have a very close working relationship. And then from there, we would go through the NTMC GM interview and hire an employment agreement process that would ideally end sometime at the end of or before the end of February. We're going to talk about the calendar for NTMC board meetings here at the end, but we will need an NTMC board meeting, maybe a special called board meeting, to approve an employment agreement as recommended by the committee, to appoint the corporation officers that would be effective March 31st, and to amend the bylaws that would be effective March the 31st. And then that would give about a month between the new general manager and the HTG team to provide changeover before the March 31st date when the HTG contract ends. So that's the vision of how we get through that 90-day period.
For that committee, your first one, they recommend board and former committee to conduct the general manager hiring and employment agreement process. That needs to happen at this meeting.
We would like to, yeah, it's not an action item by the board, it's a consensus by the board. We would want to get that identified so that we can move forward. But the first step obviously is making the decision on the contract.
Well, I would like to say that Henderson Transportation Group has been a real asset to our organization. Quality people all the way around. Y'all bailed us out, and you're to be commended for that, and helping us go through our growing pains. And you were there shoulder to shoulder every step of the way, and we appreciate that so much. I understand the need, I guess, for us to continue to evolve and be more independent. And that's why this committee item is, but I couldn't have thought of a better group of people that y'all brought to the table. So thank you so very much.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay. There's no further discussion then. The chair will entertain a motion to approve sending notice regarding termination of the second amended and restated agreement for transportation services between Henderson Transportation Group and the NTMC.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Gaines. I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It will reflect that all members voted in favor. Thank you. The other matter then was just coming to our consensus on a group of people who'd be willing to serve on the general manager hiring committee.
Right.
or maybe we jump to that. Does anybody want to talk about anything else in regards to the bylaws? That's nothing that has to be done today.
Right, so what we'll do is, that'll be on the agenda, like I said, either for the next board meeting or a next special called meeting. That we would be able to have the discussion and make sure we like all the words exactly as written for approving that bylaws change.
Regards to the committee, like the suggestion would be here is that we have the DCTA CEO and NTMC board member on that committee, DCTA Chief Operating Officer. Which, who is that?
It is to be named. We're in the recruiting process. We're in the recruiting process right now. Like I said, I expect to have somebody hired in the position before the middle of January, on or before the middle of January. And because of that person's working relationship with the general manager, I would recommend that once that person comes on board, he or she be part of the committee. Obviously, one other person involved in this process that isn't listed but is inferred is Ms. Springer from NTMC as the human resources representative from NTMC would be on this committee as well. And that's an omission on my part.
Okay. And then it says NTMC board member to be determined. That's gonna be like going around the room. David, Fred, Gina.
I get a little ahead of myself from later in the meeting, but this will be my last meeting as a board member, as I'm taking the role as city manager in Addison. So only to say, and I can speak to that later, but only to say I would not be able to serve on the jury.
You want to flip?
Flip,
No, coin.
that's fine with me.
Are you want to volunteer?
You know, I am not employed, so I have probably plenty of time to help. So I wouldn't mind doing it. However, there may be somebody else that's better equipped to take care of it, okay? All I know is that I bug him all the time, and this would make it even worse. And so he may not think this is a good idea. It may be somebody else that's busier or I shouldn't have said it that way, that has other responsibilities and so on. But I'll be happy to serve in any way that you all want me to.
Have any thoughts on that, Gina?
I'm fine with.
Okay.
I mean, we are the smallest group. That's the only reason I'm
Yeah.
hesitant.
Yeah.
That's all.
Fred, Mr. Bushy, I appreciate you're very conciliatory and gracious, so thank you for that. You know, when I think about the future, like way down the road, the idea of data-driven bus route development probably lands, again, way down the road. The likelihood might be Louisville more than Highland Village, and that's one reason why, Tina, you may want to raise your hand and say, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this process. I think it's a very light, probably not a heavy lift, as DCTA staff will carry the bulk of the load on writing the job description and all that sort of thing. But Louisville may have an interest in this before Highland Village does, and so you may consider it.
I mean, absolutely, because you all have probably the greatest amount of folks that are going to be involved to a certain extent. Plus you have it would make all the sense in the world. So it doesn't bother me, obviously, to have you do that. I was only saying that if everybody else is too busy, I'd be happy to serve. That's all I'm saying.
I think I agree that Louisville has a stake in this, a very large stake, and so I'm happy to do it. I'm trying to be respectful at my first
Understood.
meeting, so, but I'm happy to do so.
All right. With that said, our agenda items consider the process for hiring a new GM. And how about I move to recommend that the structure of the committee be the DCTA CEO as a member of the NTMC board, NTMC board member Gina McGrath, the DCA Chief Operating Officer to be named, and then DCTA HR Director.
NTMC. NTMC HR.
Oh, in TNC. Or a second to that motion?
Is it an action or is it?
We are discussing, it's considered, so.
Oh, it is an action. Okay, great. I'll make a motion for that.
Okay. You're gonna actually second it, so I moved it. You're seconding it?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion on that committee structure? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. And then also we need to direct the immediate posting of the general manager job position so that applicants can be solicited for that position. So if the NTMC HR director will do that, that'll get that ball rolling.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, I have received the job description from the NTMC Human Resources Director and have been in the process of reviewing and potentially editing. I'd like the chance to be able to share those edits with Board Member McGrath and then get the thing posted. So I think over the course of the next week, we can be able to do that. Thank you.
Does that require a formal motion, council?
Since it's a consider, let's go ahead and make a formal motion.
Okay. So that motion then to is to immediately post the general manager job position and to solicit applicants immediately. A motion on that one?
I'll make.
If I could modify immediate, could we say within 10 days?
Okay.
Or 2 weeks, even better, just in case something happened.
Any objection to that proposed wording change? All right, then that's added. So the motion then would be recommend posting within 10 days of the general manager job position and to solicit applicants. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Ayes have it, motion is adopted. Okay. I think the next item then on the agenda is the presentation of the staff spotlight. Following Kelly Richardson.
That's your calendar.
Oh, my bad. All right, the next item is then, yes, approval of the calendar for the fiscal year 2023. That was sent out to us yesterday. That's being projected on the screen. The NTMC board meetings are in green. So that is looking like the third Thursday of each month is the general rule.
Can I make one request?
Yes, sir.
So we don't kill ourselves trying to get here because of the freeway. Is it possible to make it 30 minutes later so we can get here and not have to worry about whether we're going to be able to arrive or not? If you get my drift, is it important to be that early, or is it? Or can we have another 30 minutes so that the traffic goes away?
Sir, I recommended the reprieve of 30 minutes moving from 8 to 8:30. If we want another 30 minutes to 9 o'clock, I have no problem. with
Well,
that.
I mean, other people may be coming in and this is, that's too late for them. I just know where I come from. It's pretty exciting at 8:30, that's all.
I'm fine with a 9 o'clock start.
Ms. McGrath, how's that work in your schedule? Okay. All righty.
David, you'll be okay with that?
I'm just committing. I'm committing somewhere in the future.
David's about to say, no,
so-
6:30 AM. Y'all, we're gonna do it at 6:30.
That sounds
So the,
Well, let me, Keisha, any issues with that? Okay.
all right, so then the motion would be to approve the calendar as projected with meetings beginning at 9 AM. Further discussion on that item? I also move approval of the calendar and beginning at 9 a.m. Is there a second?
Well, I guess I ought to second it.
Yes. All right, any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Say no. Ayes have it. Unanimous. And now we can go to our staff spotlight. Kelly Richardson.
Mr. Vice Chair, unfortunately, Mr. Richardson was unable to speak on the operator's behalf, but I will. This is Ms. Tina Coxey. She's one of our seasoned operators on the fixed route system. Great operator, great spirit, highly motivated. Comes to work every day with a smile and has received several compliments that was put into the system by her customers and ridership on every route that she's driven. Like I said, she is motivated and it's a pleasure to work with. And I guarantee you, if you met her one time, you'd never forget. She's just that awesome.
All right. Congratulations to Ms. Coxey. I doubt if she's joined us via Zoom. But if staff will extend our greatest congratulations to her and appreciation for her good work, and particularly for helping this particular passenger that is highlighted in her spotlight. All righty, the next item on the agenda is to convene an executive session. I don't believe there are any items scheduled. We will drop down then to number 5, future board meetings and agenda items. We've established our future board meetings and starting times. Next board meeting is January 25th. Are there any items that board members would like to see addressed at the next board meeting?
Oh, with the new calendar, it won't be on the 25th. What will be that next date that we just approved?
About that.
The 19th. Okay.
Yes. January 9th. Okay, hearing none, leave it to staff to continue to do their excellent job. Any comments before we adjourn? Mr. Gaines, you said you had a
Sure. So as mentioned earlier, I've accepted the position of city manager in Addison beginning January 3rd. So as a result, I'll no longer be on the board as a representative from Denton. The city will determine who's going to be the next board member as soon as possible. I was just looking at the calendar. There's a council meeting on January 10th. So it is possible that is a somewhat quick turnaround to find an appointment at that meeting. Hopefully we can get everything to that point so that you have a new member at the January meeting. But as soon as possible, we will have a representative from Denton. I've enjoyed my time on the board, getting to know everyone here, the staff, and have appreciated everyone's contribution. So thank you very much. And I will be watching from afar.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, well then, last item is probably the conclusion of this meeting. I'm also resigning as on, I start being a member of the Texas House of Representatives on January the 10th. Go down there on January the 5th. So I will not be able to participate in your many upcoming meetings. I also appreciate the opportunity to serve that many fine people. Again, I want to give a shout out to Hendrickson. Y'all did a really spectacular job. And we have a great new person in yourself there. And this is going to be really a great organization as you move forward. And well, maybe I'll bump into y'all along the road somewhere. If you're down in Austin, come see me.
Not in an accident kind of way.
Not an accident. I don't do personal injury litigation. Get an accident.
What you're saying is anything we want, all we have to do is call you on the phone and you make sure it gets through the legislature.
That's
right?
how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the last item is to adjourn. If there's no objection, no further business come for the assembly will adjourn. Hearing no objection, then the meeting is adjourned.